I accepted to speak on Nigeria's unity and regional socio-political groups, influence and impact of the Northern State Governors Forum. The Northern State Governors Forum is made up of 19 states governors, with FCT, well, FCT being geographically within the northern states. 19 states out of the 36 states, and the northern part constitute about 52% of the total population of more than 160 million people. You are already aware that, well, as we are described, of many groups, ethnic diversities, high-rising expectations, and believe me, more often than not, competing aspirations and continuous struggle for relevance by, unfortunately for us, fragmented elites. In many countries, the elites come together to protect their interest. But in Nigeria, probably what seemed to unify the elites is probably in corruption. In that one, you don't hear ethnic diversity in the number of people, or those who steal money, or those who do the wrong thing. Every ethnic group is involved. And unfortunately, when it happens, sometimes an ethnic group will even come in your defense because they see it more as you are stealing on our behalf, even if in the final analysis it's really cheating not only that ethnic group but the whole of the country. But then we continue to explore the diversities for strength, unity and peaceful coexistence, forging our interdependent relationships based on common ties, language, aspiration, and indeed faith. Therefore, the Northern State Governors Forum does not believe in the breakup of Nigeria. We have had too much noise about sovereign conference to solve our problems. And our argument is, you cannot have two sovereigns in one place. We have a National Assembly and we have a provision in our Constitution on how to amend the Constitution. Granted, and everyone, many of us have agreed that the 1999 Constitution is not a perfect document. But believe me, there is no Constitution that is perfect. Every period of time, you need to do some amendments to be able to be at par with the new development. So our argument is, whatever it is that you think should be done within the concept of the sovereignty that we have at the moment. So we recognize the diversity that has predated the colonial period. However, the emergence of influential regional social groups in the country continues to shape the nation's political and economic development. In the socio-economic and political development of the country, the Northern State Governors Forum has been playing critical roles in partnership with the federal government and development partners in responding to the challenges facing our states and the nation in general. But let me start with the recent events of how the Northern State Governors Forum had acted. You all recall when our president was ill and when he was taken out of the country, in fact, without information. In other countries, when a leader is being taken out, the nation will be told of what he was suffering, why he needed to be taken out of the country, and which will confirm our failure of why we cannot provide a hospital in our country, that we had to psychologically all rush out to other countries. In fact, at that time, by coincidence, when our president was taken to Saudi Arabia, the Saudi Arabian leader was taken to New York. So you wondered what was happening in such situations. Because many people do not understand what is happening, so there was a call for making sure that the vice president, as enshrined in our Constitution, that in the absence or incapacity of the president, the vice president will take over and act. there was argument as to whether there was a letter written by the former president to allow, or the late president to allow the vice president to take over. And the National Assembly at the time said they were not going to take anything from the then vice president until that letter that should have emanated from the late president. And there was no letter. So we had to go and start doing things. The Northern Governors Forum, to our credit, were the first to say, look, if we allow the situation to go, all of us will suffer the consequence. And we met and agreed that we really have to push for this particular position. And as it was the case, we met, agreed, and that same day, we moved from Kaduna to Abuja, and we met the Nigerian Governors Forum umbrella and insisted that the president and the vice president must be made acting president. And we contacted the National Assembly leadership, and hence the doctrine of necessity came about. So that was one aspect. Then we were challenged by the zoning and rotation issue, which was a provision by a political party, the ruling party, has it in its constitution that if the president comes from the northern part, the vice president will come, and in fact the 6 zones of the country, the northwest, north central, northeast, that constitutes the northern part. Then you have the southwest, the southeast, and the south-south. And many politicians, many leaders in the northern part felt that because the ruling party had it in rotation and that the late president, or the president then, was incapacitated, therefore the leadership of the presidency must of necessity stay in the northern region. Many of us felt that was a party constitution. The Nigerian constitution was specific. Whoever was the vice president at that time, in the case of incapacity or whatever reason, the vice president should take over. And we also agreed that, look, if a party says it has zoning and rotation, and God in his mercy said he has taken away your zoning by taking the life of the president, wouldn't you reconsider the situation given the circumstances? And we again stood our ground that since majority of us actually were in the ruling party, at that time we had 27 members or governors out of the 36 that were in the ruling party. And in the northern states, we were 16 then, only 3 were members of other parties. So we met again in Kaduna. But that one we had to vote because we knew that the undercurrent, the political undercurrent in our region was really for zoning. The northern states haven't had a president from the southern part for 8 years. They felt that they needed the 8 years to do their own thing. But we also knew that if we allow such a situation where the political party constitution supersedes the Nigerian constitution, then you could as well say bye-bye to the constitution. So we met and we had a voting. Lucky for us, 14 voted for sticking to the Nigerian constitution. 4 or 3 said no, we must stick to zoning, and 1 was neither here nor there. And because we were 18, the 19th state could not attend for some reasons, and I think we want to put him on the neutral. So 2 people actually voted neutral. Because if the governor was not coming, he should have sent his deputy governor to represent him. But I think he wanted to avoid taking a stand. So we could say 2 neutral, 3 zoning, 14 for saying no zoning because of the circumstances. And that again allowed the current president to contest and really win the election. But indeed, to the detriment of many of us, because immediately after the election, there were a lot of violence in many of the northern states, either expressing their distastes for the role we played, or Because even during the campaigns, there were people who were saying if they did not get it, they would make the country ungovernable. And unfortunately for us, even if we had stuck to saying we should stick to zoning, the way and manner people came out to contest elections, particularly in the ruling party, would have made it difficult for the northern states to have retained that position. Because too many of them were competing, and we knew at the end of the day they would have divided the vote. And in fact, that was precisely what happened. Because by the time they came back to say, okay, everybody should vote for a different party, already the damage had been done by their divisive nature of the campaign. So that's one other thing that we took, and I'm giving you the recent one rather than going into too much of history. Many people may not understand, and I've been explaining the situation about the fuel subsidy, and I'm sure many of you read about it. This was something that was inherited a long time, which was meant for the good of the people. That since we were producers of crude oil, it was not nice where the price of refined oil could be that expensive in the country. And so there was an arrangement to say, let us subsidize the price of oil. But by the time I took over in 2007, and I went around to fuel stations in Niger State, in fact, the prices were beyond commercial price. It was exploitative price in the name of fuel subsidy. And every month, a lot of money will be deducted from the Federation account before the allocation will be deducted in the name of fuel subsidy. And the money was becoming astronomical in terms of the deduction. So we discussed amongst us, the governors, where is this subsidy going to? We realized we were not subsidizing the common people. We were subsidizing some corrupt people who were already taking the money into their pockets. And we took a stand that it must be removed. It took President a long time to really come to the removal. Unfortunately, when he was going to announce the removal, he did not take us into confidence. So there was a communication gap and the subsequent problems. And again, what came out of it justified our position to say that it must be removed because the common people were not enjoying. In 1 year, out of 3-point-something trillion budget of the country, 1.6 trillion was spent in the subsidy, which were not enjoyed by the people. Well, the members of the House of Representatives probed it, but they also entered into their own trap, which, like I said, trap of corruption is like we are in a situation where the thief, like we say in Hausa, the thief that has not been caught, his name is Mamman. If he is caught, he's a thief. Because those who are supposed to bring out the issues for us, they remove so many people who enjoyed from the list. And then one other person that was in the list that probably if they had gotten the bribe before their report came public, we would never have known. Then his name was there, or 2 companies, their names were on the list. And then the chairman of the probe committee that came out with the result that about 1.6 trillion had been expended, also collected $620,000. In fact, they said, I don't know whether it's true, they said when he went to collect, he went alone. That when he went to collect, he put some in the pocket and then when there was remaining, he put some in the car and put it. All I'm saying is that if the governors had not taken that position, the issue will have continued. In fact, at the last discussion that we had, because even though the subsidy has been, the amount of money has been reduced, there are still the deductions going on in the name of subsidy. So we believe that it is the whole structure of our petroleum sector that should really be reformed properly. Not simply removal of management and co. No, the totality of the situation should be looked at. We have talked about the Constitution. We have talked about but let me talk about something since we are in the corruption part. Many people really, we cannot understand. If you had told me, yeah, I was wondering, I have never spoken for 25 minutes. Even as a teacher in the classroom, it used to be 35 minutes. But then I will try.
10 minutes more.
Yes, sir. Corruption. I think apart from the original, or the government of independence, when the regions were strong enough and the federal system was really a little weaker, with the coup of '66 and the subsequent military government that came, the federal government became so strong that with the creation of states, breaking up of the regions into states, there was a unitary system in place, because everything the federal government announced, all that it needed to do was to send money to the governors to implement. But if you are talking of a federal system, for example, in Niger State, I have the largest expanse of land in the country. I have 10% of the Nigerian land. About 80% of that is really for agriculture. I should be allowed to think in terms of that, what I should do to be able to feed the nation. For example, we import rice of $2 billion, $3 billion per annum. And it has been established even at the local production that Niger State is producing 1/3 of what the country needs at the subsistence level that we are. So if we can mechanize, it means we should be able, with the cooperation of other states, not only feed the country, but also export. Because most of these countries that we go to buy this rice are no better than us. But because they have found a better way of handling situation. But again, even in that, what we see is the corruption part of it. Because the few people who make profit ensure that they are within the economic decision-making process. So that even if a policy is to be taken, they will thwart it. They will ensure that that decision had not been taken. When the federal government, under our insistence, we said, you must stop the importation of food. It was announced. And we thought the announcement would take place from 2012. In fact, that was what was there. But suddenly, we had that, no, the announcement will take place from 2015. So how are you sure that the new government coming in 2015 will adhere to a decision taken by an outgoing government? And that is again part of our problems. The lack of continuity from one government to the other. The example of policy making, that today the budget of Nigeria, for the past 20 years, if you analyze it, you will discover that no more than 40% had really been utilized annually. And then you do not see the kind of carryover, even though budget is an estimate, but because of inefficiency, because of other issues, many lack of capacity in those who are executing the budget, a lot of money, but you don't see it carried over to the next year. So these are some of the problems that we face daily. And sorry, the member of the National Assembly, I'm not only on your case, because the corruption is even at the local government level. And I have the chairman of the Niger State local governments here with us, and I'm sure you can only confirm. Another area of a major concern for us is all along, I think we have been, as a country, we have been too liberal in terms of how we look at some other groups and principles. For example, religious groups. Yes, our constitution says there should be freedom of worship. But then we needed to define the freedom. Does it mean freedom for a Muslim to stop a Christian, or for a Christian to stop a Muslim from practicing his religion? Now, if it is for each one to practice his own religion, then there must be a line where you have to stop, where your freedom should stop and the freedom of the other religion starts. But along the line, we have been very hypocritical on the way we treated religious groups. And that explains why I suffered in 2009 when I took a decision to get rid of a sect that came in 1970s with only 7 people coming to ask some villagers, please help us with the farmland so that we can do our farming and religion without disturbance. By 2009, the 7 people had become 9,000. And they have put themselves as an enclave. They were calling themselves Darul Islam, the house of Islam. And that all of us who were outside were non-Muslims. And they had their laws. The way they were marrying off. Today, if you make a mistake or somebody is annoyed with you among the leadership, they will take your wife and marry her off to somebody within that day. And anybody, if by mistake you enter the group, the enclave, you never come out. In fact, the irony of it is when some security people were sent to discover what they were doing, they became members. So they were already disturbing the place and causing a lot of problems, particularly for Etsunupe, whose domain they were in. And we took a decision with the support of the federal government to dislodge them. After we took a census, we discovered that 3/4 of them were actually non-Nigerians. But because of the problem we have in the country, part of it, those of you who might have heard about the plateau thing, this settler indigene syndrome, where some people have moved to a particular place, have spent more than 100 years, but they are still looked at as settlers, and those who call themselves indigenous. But these are more of economic problems rather than the actual issue. So we discovered, for example, in Niger State, there were some places where somebody will come today from Niger Republic or from Chad Republic, and he may be seen more as an indigene because he speaks Hausa and he's probably a Muslim. But the Yoruba man or the Igbo man who was born there for the past 30, 40 years, they will still look at him as non-indigent. And that is why we stopped. We said no more school fees in Niger State in the elementary and high schools. Because even in that, there was this discrimination of saying if you are seen not from Niger State, an Igbo man or a Yoruba man will have to pay higher than the so-called indigene of Niger State, which again will include the people from Republic of Benin, the Republic of Niger, and Chad. So we said, no, stop it, so that we do not create this indigene settler syndrome like it started like a child's play in Plateau. I don't want to go into the history of that one, but at least for the Plateau angle, that is the angle to look at it. It started like the state capital, which was more dominant by the Hausa-speaking people, and then the other groups thought that the state capital should belong to them. It should not be seen. And then now it has escalated to a situation where almost every time we thought the issue had been settled, something else will come up. But again, we have been warning that we have this group of people, the Fulani-speaking people. Throughout Africa, they seem to have the best communication channel. From the Senegal to Ethiopia, they may have some variation in their dialect, but they all have the same culture. If you touch a group of them, what they will do, they will not retaliate directly, the local people will not retaliate. What they will do is to send kola nut to a group of Fulani in Senegal and they will come and revenge for them what has happened. And we think that is what is happening in Plateau. Because you could see the nature of the organized. Yes, at one time they were antagonized, their cows were taken and co, but now the revenge has been escalated beyond that. Our fear is that we hope this group will not now translate into the so-called Boko Haram. Because even the Boko Haram now, we don't know which one is the original Boko Haram that was talking of religion, and the franchise nature of Boko Haram. Because even armed robbers now, when they behave and pretend that it's Boko Haram approach. And that exacerbates or escalates our security problems. In addition to the fact that, unlike in other countries where, again, the media is a little, if maybe the control will not be the right word, but the media understands its role properly so that it doesn't say things or use hyperboles that will scare people. Like I was saying this morning, in Nigeria, you don't need to send an intelligent officer to stay there. All you need to do is to make sure you have our newspapers, you have access to our radio station, and you will understand everything. Because when you pick our newspaper, most foreigners, when they read our newspapers, they think that by tomorrow Nigeria will break because of the way and manner we report our issues. So the Boko Haram thing, because I'm sure many people will be interested in that particular thing. We believe we believe that, okay, so when you tidy up everything, we have security challenges, developmental challenges, and the need for reform. But fundamentally, we do not think those people who cry for sovereign conference, that is the answer, because you can't have two sovereigns in one place. That we need to now reduce the strength of the federal government by the devolution of powers to the state and make the state proper federating units. In that case, issues like agriculture, education, even today federal government runs secondary school education. Health, like we argue, the federal government has no land beyond the federal capital territory. Therefore, the federal government should be more concerned with foreign affairs, defense, security, and coordination of governmental affairs in terms of quality control. Let me thank you very much. I will wait for the questions because I'm sure I prepared for 2 hours.